Sarima, or hi everyone, and welcome to Grow Make Cook. This week is another delightful end of summer week. The weather has gotten cooler, the days are getting shorter, but the jobs never end.
Bok, I'm Mandy O. This is Grow Make Cook, and welcome to my garden. I grew up in Australia in a permaculture family, but after we got married, Mr. O and I moved here to his home country of Croatia. I am a passionate and hands-on homemaker and gardener, and I love life's simple pleasures. So join me on my journey, and together we can learn to grow, make, and cook.
This is the second week in September, or Rujan. There are so many of these delightful and delicious cayenne chilies on the bush at the moment. Picking them has become a job that actually you can see I've not really stayed on top of. There are a couple of really important things to note when you're picking chilies to dry. And the first one is to keep a nice long tail on them as long as you can. It stops the moisture getting back down into the chili and rotting it off while you're waiting for it to dry. We have way too many of these delicious chilies for us to eat at the moment, and I really don't want to let this delightful crop go to waste. So I'm making a very traditional way of preserving them, and this is a chili string. Now, most people would be familiar with the decorative objects of pre-dried chilies that are really dense, and you've got hundreds of chilies on a tiny little bit of string like this. But for me, that's a little bit too dense. You don't get enough air in there and the chilies don't dry. So if you're going to make a chili string for drying your chilies as opposed to storing and presenting them and using them as a decoration, you need to have them a little bit more spaced out. Now, in order to do that, I've just gotten some regular cotton string. The fact that it's cotton and not polyester is quite important. This will breathe and it will let the moisture wick out. So, wants to be a natural fiber. The next thing I'm doing is I've just threaded it onto a needle. This helps with actually getting them on. And what I'm doing is making tiny little knots in my string so that there is a gap between each chili. Now this is the big difference between this and a decorative chili string. A decorative chili string, they're all just piled one on top of the other and they're super dense and they'll poke out in all different directions. Whereas for this, there's a little knot and then you thread the chili on in the stem somewhere, leaving enough of a stem here that you can tie onto it. Thread it down, and then we tie another knot, a very simple looping knot, around the stem of the chili to support it so that it doesn't flop all over the place. Now that all the chilies that I want to put on this little string are on there, and I'm kind of running out of string anyway, I'm just going to tie the last one on exactly the same as all the others. And now I will want to keep most of this piece of string to act as a loop. So importantly, when I have done this, I have kept a 2-string thread, which means all the way down are 2 bits of cotton, which makes it nice and strong. And so what I'm going to do is just nip the needle off, cutting the string, not the needle obviously, but just giving that a quick chop. Up-a-doo. Tying those 2 loose ends to make a little loop. in between my top chili and the top of the string. It just means that I've got a way to hang this up once we get inside. Now I'll be hanging this out of direct sunlight, but in a warm, dry, airy place where it'll be able to sort of sit there in the breeze for months actually. These will just last and last and last this way. So it's not as pretty as a lot of the beautiful decorative chili strings, but once you've got these babies up and drying, you are going to have chili for months. Something that was really, really beautiful this year and brought me a lot of joy was the beautiful sort of ballerina-esque pink flowers of my echinacea. And it's something I'd really like actually a whole lot more of. Now, these are short-lived perennials, so they'll last a couple of years. And these ones I've got here are actually a couple of years old themselves, about 2, I think. I am trying to save some seeds because this is something I have decided I actually really want more of. I think they are just the most delightful tall flowers with beautiful colours. So, seed saving is a really good job for this time of year. There are so many things that are going over and finishing. Sunflowers, echinacea, just the seeds that are around at this time of year, the quantities are amazing. So, if you have some local seed, either in your own garden or a friend, now is the time to first ask permission if it's not your plants, but start collecting, because seed saving and planting is a really good way of getting a whole lot of plants for free. I love when you get this beautiful, nice, fine feeling of this fresh compost ready to give life. Now, what I want to do is start preparing for next spring and winter salads and thinking about what's to come in the years ahead. And a really good thing to sow at this time of year is spring onions. So, in order to have lots of lovely little spring onions in spring, I need to sow them now. So what I'm doing is I'm actually sowing these in lines. It's a little bit unusual for me, I know, but I'm just making a little fine drill in the soil, like that. And I'm doing this because I'm going to cloche these. They are winter hardy, so the variety of spring onions that I have is pretty tough, and it will cope with a bit of frost and a bit of snow. And in milder places, like down on the coast or over the pond, further south of here, they would be completely winter hardy. But here, where we sometimes get quite a lot of snow, they'll want just a little bit of protection. No heat, just the cloche will be enough to protect them over winter. So what I'm doing is I'm sowing these so that they will sit nicely underneath my cloche. Now, the seeds for spring onions are typical of the onion family. They're these lovely little black things, and I'm trying to sow them very thinly. So I'm just taking a little pinch at a time, half a dozen seeds perhaps, and then just sprinkling them very thinly along my line. Now, to mark my rows, because I don't normally use them, I am popping in just a couple of little sticks so that I know where I've sowed my onions while I can still see them nice and clearly. And then what I'm going to do is just run my fingers on either side of the row, gently pushing those little bits of compost and beautiful soil, and it really is beautiful, all this freshly sifted compost on top. So now we've got that all the way across like that. I'll give them a really good soak, but with my rose head watering can, because if I use any sort of large-headed pouring type spout on these guys, it will simply wash all my little seeds away, and you'll have no idea. You'll have onions coming up here, there, and everywhere. Sometimes I just can't resist pouring little seeds into my hands and just looking at them, admiring them, smelling them. They're just delightful things, and I'm always in awe that from such tiny things all our food basically grows. These ones are formatovillats, or corn salad. Some people call it smash. It's a lovely winter salad. This is the kind of thing that you can leave out. It's really tough. It'll last all winter long. It grows very slowly in the winter months, but it's just a trooper. It makes for delicious, sweet salads in a time when there's very little growing in the garden. So, these guys I am just broad sowing in this little patch where I know I've kept it clear just for these guys. It's next to my baby beetroots and my eggplants and a tomato. So this bed will clear out a lot when it gets to these time in winter when these guys are really shining. So I'm just sprinkling them quite thinly over the top of the soil, and I'm going to water them in as opposed to actually teasing the soil over them, because these guys don't mind a bit of sunshine. In fact, I've heard some people say that it helps with germination to get a bit of sunshine. So gently sprinkling all my tiny little seeds all over the surface of the soil where I want them to be, and then I'm just going to water them in with my rose. It's so lovely planning for the future, but also enjoying the moments of now, of plenty, of delicious, fresh things. This combination of being in the moment and enjoying what we have, but also thinking about and preparing for the future. These are some of those elements of gardening which I just adore. But I think that's probably about all we've got time for this week. So if you like what we're doing, like the video. If you want notifications, use the bell icon below. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Until next week then, do widzenia.